Hey everybody, Lawrence here with Dirty Basic Terrain, coming at you with another one. Monsters, we use them, we love to kill them, but they can be expensive, especially if you're buying miniatures. But there is a solution to cheap monsters. Plastic bugs. You get them around Halloween, the day after, right after Halloween, they're on discount. Buy them then. Or you can go to like dollar stores. They'll have little plastic baggies of like different bugs and all this other wonderful stuff. Well, spend a little time, and you can have some nice looking cheap monsters for your low level PCs to go after, and to go after your PCs. What I want to do is I want to take you from how to take some cheap plastic miniatures from the dollar store, and from I got some after Halloween, and turning them into something that would be kind of cool on the tabletop with not a whole lot of effort. And you'll be able to terrorize your players with a whole slew of different creatures. But before we get to that, I want to give a big thank you to all my patrons. With your help every month, guys, it makes doing this easier. I mean, how else do you think I pay for a bunch of cheap plastic monsters? So, as always, guys, I can't thank you enough. Alright, let's get to it. A bunch of plastic little critters. I've got some scorpions, some spiders, a ladybug, some crabs, which I don't use because it's that soft, hard rubber plastic, but the spiders. These came from a pack. A bunch of these came from a pack at the Dollar Tree. Some came from Halloween decorations. But now each of these, for the bigger ones, not the mini spiders, but I want to pin these all because it's going to be a little bit difficult getting them glued to the bases eventually, and also I'll mount these on some coffee stir sticks for ease of painting. But I just want to glue a piece of a paper clip in, and that'll give me a pin which I can actually use to attach it to the bases once I'm done. Now I got a couple resin bases here, which kind of like a hard plastic. I want to score it up a good bit just to make sure whatever I glue to it will actually have something to grip on. Now for another base here, I want to have like a rock sticking up. So I'm taking a pine bark nugget and I'm cutting it in half at an angle, and that'll give me two rocks for two different bases that I can have sticking up, and it'll give one of the bugs something to crawl on. And then it's a quick, does it work? Yeah, I'm going to use the giant ants for these. Then a quick splotch of some super glue gel, smack it onto the base, and boom, I got a jutting rock out of the base. At least it'll wind up looking cool, so why not, Of course, I want to do a stepped appearance, kind of similar I did with the Desert Dwarves way back then. So I'm going to cut up several layers of this thin XPS and make each layer successively smaller, and just keep going and keep going. And the stuff's thin enough that it actually cuts with scissors just fine. And each layer, like I said, will get smaller and smaller as it goes up, and that way I'll have like a step layered stone. And as you can see that, and to get on quick, it's just a matter of brushing on some PVA for each layer, slapping it on, rinse and repeat. And then I'll get a cool like layered rock look. Or at least that's what I'm telling myself. But this won't be the final thing I do for these particular bases. See, I'm trying to change it up a little bit for each base, just so they don't all look the same. I want variations. You can do all one base if you want to, but I felt like just kind of switching it up for different ones. Now I'm going to just use my homemade texture paste and just kind of paint it all over, because I don't want it just the foam showing through. I want to use the paste and just more of a rock look, I guess. I don't know. But it's just a matter of painting it on. Then I'll get my stiff bristle brush and then dip water and get more layer lines. And some of these bases, like this one right here, I'm going to be just adding straight up texture paste over the whole thing, and some of them will only have texture paste in certain spots. Like I said, I'm trying to vary up the bases because all these won't be in one spot. Now, here's something else I'm going to try. Again, I'm trying to get variety in my bases here. And just glue up, and I'm actually using tea leaves there and smashing it on. Tap, tap, done. I said variations. And for this one, I'm actually using mixed herbs. Glue, dump it on, tap it on, and I've got a different type of base. Quick and simple. Actually, here in the States, we call it Italian herbs, but whatever. Mixed herbs, Italian herbs, whatever you want to call it. It smells nice and it looks good. Of course, now that I got my bases prepped, it's time to actually start priming everything. And I'm just going to use my airbrush and prime all the bases and all the miniatures. As you can see, I have them mounted on coffee stir sticks. It's just will make it easier for painting later on. The bases, they're just getting straight up primered. But all the critters, they're going to get primered and now do zenithal highlights. Now you'll see the snake every once in a while. I wound up not doing that because for some reason I wasn't feeling it, so I just kind of maybe some other day. But I'm giving them a gray zenithal highlight right here because these are going to be slap chop. These are cheap and I want to keep it simple, so it's going to be a slap chop day. But again, they're all getting a gray zenithal, and then I'm giving a white dry brush highlight. Because, again, slap chop. I like slap chop. You get a decent paint job. You're not going to win any painting awards doing it this way, but it'll look good on the table. At least that's what they say. This, I'm going for a desert scene. I'm using my go-to. I think there's a true ochre color. Kind of bright yellow, but makes a good base color for a desert theme if you want sand and dried out wasteland. But again, just give it 100% coverage with this color, and boom, I got my base on. And of course, I'll move on to a mid-tone, which I don't remember the color, but it's kind of like a sandy color almost. And give it a heavy overbrush, just leaving like the dark crevices, deepest crevices alone. You guys know the drill. Base, mid-tone, light. We're going for tabletop. And I'm going to give it a real quick, heavy dry brush with desert sand color. I think it's from Americana. But again, and this is my go-to colors for doing desert. And it works. For me, at least. Of course, now that the deserts are done, I'm going to move on to the ones that are more, dirt, earthy. Anything that has, I want to have like a dirt or earth appearance. I'm going to hit with dark brown. I think this is burnt umber from Apple Barrel. But again, any of the dirt areas, I want 100% coverage, or at least as close as I can to of that. And you can see some don't have. I'm not doing all over the bases, but anywhere that has dirt, that I eventually want dirt, it's getting that. And of course, I'm going with my mid-tone brown. This is my go-to for dirt appearances. So of course I'm going to use a mid-tone brown. I think it's chestnut brown from Apple Barrel, but just boom, mid-tone, like a heavy overbrush, like 70-80% coverage, whatever, but leaving the darkest recesses alone. And now that I got that done, it's time to do the dry brush with a light mocha, I think it is. But again, this is just a quick heavy dry brush, just to highlight all the different details and ridges and all that happy hoo-ha. Now I have a couple bases that are going to have stones, as you saw in the very beginning. But this is just basically, I'm using my dark blue-gray from Apple Barrel and trying to get as much coverage as I can with this. Just slop it on, trying, avoid the dirt areas down below. And of course, those layered ones that I had made earlier in the video, I want to get 100% coverage with the dark blue-gray too. And of course, along with everything else, I'm going to use a mid-tone. I think this is slate gray. I'm not sure, but it's a mid-tone gray, and I'm giving a heavy overbrush quick with this, leaving all the the deepest recesses alone. I definitely am not going for 100% coverage with this, but I'm just trying to bring more of the textures and just make it look pretty. Or the very beginnings of making it look pretty. And now that that's done, I actually want to give a heavy dry brush of a light gray. And this will just make all the details of whatever you're painting pop. And at least it should, I hope. But again, just a quick heavy dry brush on all the different of a light gray on all the stone areas. Of course, I have my homemade dark brown wash here that I'm going to put on all the dirt areas and the stone, but not the desert or the tea leaves or the mixed herbs that I used. This is just going on stuff I've actually painted, except for the desert. This will just give it a more... This will dirty it up and dingy. Just look at more... It'll also give like brown streaks and on the stones and stuff. It'll make it... It won't look quite as painted. It'll look more natural. It'll look good, make it look good on the table. But again, dark brown wash. And of course for this particular one, because I want it to have a swamp look to it, so I'm using a green wash on it. I don't normally like to use manufactured washes on it, but it was just one, so why not? Not at all. The washes are dry. I want to bring back the highlights, so I'm giving a real light dry brush to all the stone area right now, just to make all the details really pop. And with the wash on it, just gives it also a bit dingy, dirty, nasty look to it. And including the stepped one, it kind of got a little dark for me, so I went a little heavier on the dry brush just to make it pop more. But again, this will just bring up the highlights after the wash. And as with the stone, I want to dry brush all the dirt areas on all the different bases, just to make it pop a little more, the same as the stone. This is just a real quick light dry brush, just to bring back more some of the highlights after I've done all the wash. I like doing the wash like that. It adds something to it. It brings the whole thing a lot more. Yeah, I just like the way it looks. So, of course, that's why I do it. Because this is mine, so I'll do it. Okay, some of these, this swamp base, I have this swamp green flock that I'm going to use. I'm using some watered down PVA to attach it. So, swamp green flocking, paint on some PVA, sprinkle it on to where the glue is, give it a little pat down, flip it over, tap it off, and I got it. Just got to wait for it to dry now. Yeah, of course I got it in that area. Whatever. Now, for the mixed herbs and the tea leaves, I need to seal them in better, so I'm sprinkling on some alcohol that'll break down any surface tension for my watered down PVA. And it'll allow that PVA just to soak down on and through, and this will seal in any loose leaves, and you won't have to worry about anything falling off. Again, watered down PVA, and I'm going to start adding flocking to the different bases. You don't do it solid. Just leave some dirt showing. Leave some of the dirt areas, and this is my go-to. Sprinkle on some finer. This is all woodland scenics, fine flocking, earth, burnt grass, and yellow for a highlight. Pat it down, tap it off, move on to the next one. Now, I want some spider webs on these because I have spiders. So I'm using my stretched out dryer sheets, used dryer sheets, and just attaching it down with some watered down PVA. And if you notice, I'm doing it in layers because a single one, it will just but you do small pieces in layers and boom, done. And of course, these layered rocks I'm going to use for the small spiders, and I'm going to do the same thing. Use stretched out dryer sheets and just glue it down with some watered down PVA. And of course, I'll do piece after piece after piece just to bring it up, and not one big wadded piece, because the spiders aren't going to spit out a big wad. They're going to do line after layer after layer after layer. So that's what I'm going to do. Spiders. Of course, now with these swamp bases, I want to kind of paint in the area that's going to have water. So I'm using a dark gray watered down paint right now, just to give it a dark, eerie depth to it, and try and get it along the edges of where all the dirt is. And I don't want a bright look to it. I just want this to be very dingy looking. So, watered down dark gray paint. Quick, easy. Now I want to give this some depth, so I'm using some dark black paint, and I'm just kind of painting in the middle there just to make it look like it has some depth and it's not all one level. Is this step necessary? Depending on what you use for water afterwards, but it can be so. It'll give us, painting like a little dark streak in the middle will definitely give it a sense of depth and not just a flat 2D look to it. So if you're going to put colored water on, no, it's not necessary. But if the water's see-through, yes. All right, let's make some water. I'm putting a drop of some burnt umber and a drop of green into some 5-minute epoxy, which I also added an equal amount of isopropyl alcohol, and mixing it all up just so I can have ease of work. And using a pipette here and just kind of squirting it into all the places that it needs to be. Now, adding the alcohol makes it much more liquidy, so it's easier to work with, and that's why I do it. Now, let's actually start painting these bugs. I'm just going to be using either express paints from Vallejo, contrast paints from Citadel, or speed paints from Army Painter. I just look for the color I want and do a quick slap it on, make it look good. Some of it, I may have to go back and doctor up because I'm not completely happy with how it turned out, but that is what it is. For the ants, I'm going with red because fire ants. So giant fire ants would be even better. And I wasn't entirely happy with it, so I went back and slapped them with a wash just to make them look darker and dingier and just kind of meaner. Again, they are. Fire ants are bad enough as it is, but giant fire ants? Ooh, man, that would not be good. And of course, ladybugs. I'm using the same red that I use on the fire ants. Look, they're ladybugs, but I'll tell you what, ladybugs are voracious predators, and if a bug is bright and pretty like that, that's a way to warn off predators. You don't want nothing to do with me. So, yeah, red. I'm going red. And of course, there's a large chunk of a ladybug. So it's black, so I'm getting the legs and the head. Anything that's black, at least for this first round on the ladybugs, I'm just using a black speed paint, or express paint, sorry. Now, again, with the ladybugs, the red was just a little too bright for me, so I hit it with a dark red wash. Just to, darken it down a bit and make it look a little less friendly. Oh, well, that's what I was doing now. But again, ladybugs are not the pretty, happy little things that they're made out to be. They're not cute. They're not nice. They are voracious predators. People add them to their gardens to wipe out other insects. So, yeah, they are. Just imagine a giant one coming after your low-level players. It's like, oh, that's so cute. Ah, it's eating me. Trust me, they would if they could. And of course, there are white spots on ladybugs, so I got to paint those. I mean, yeah, there are many, many different types of ladybugs out there, but, the ones I know of are the 7-dot ladybugs. They have 7 black dots, and they have a couple white spots on them, so I'm just hitting up the white spots right now. And of course, I got to get the dots on the ladybug. Now, the marker thing, you know what? It's simple, it's quick and easy, and it was actually a suggestion by Earthman Brick that I do it this way. I was like, I don't want to paint it. I want to paint it, but he's like, you know what? Screw it. This is easier. And I'm not going for any, paint awards here, so, yeah. Using a black Sharpie to paint on some black dots. Perfect. It worked. And again, like I said, I'm just trying, these are the 7-dot ladybugs. 3 spots on each wing. There's 1 in the middle of the back, so that's where they get the 7. And of course, we got to paint some other critters now. And what am I painting? Oh, yeah, spiders. I like spiders. Now, I actually, Googled different types of tarantulas and stuff, and I was like, oh, wait, the Goliath bird eater colors. I mean, they're already big as it is, like the size of a dinner plate. So I decided to pick their color scheme. Quick and easy. Now, just to break up all the color, its fangs, I decided to go with like a greasy black, just to darken it up so it's not all one solid color and kind of boring. But Goliath bird eaters, I mean, again, giant versions of a giant spider. Why not? But again, it went with this like tannish brown color for the body and black for the fangs. And it works. And of course, the little ones, which I've used in other builds before, but I figured, spider swarms. So I'll put a couple on a base, and there are your spider swarms. Paint the bodies the same color as I painted the Goliath one, and as I've done before, I'll paint the legs black just for a little bit of visual interest. Is there any spiders out there like that? I don't know, probably. But again, this is a quick, make it look kind of cool on the tabletop and move on. And of course, giant frogs. Why not? I think there are D&D monsters that are giant frogs. Yeah, I'd have to look. But, of course, I went with classic. I'm going with a green. Or, actually, I'm painting the underside of it yellow. Because the underside of amphibians tend to be lighter. And I'll paint the top of them a green. Am I happy with how it turns out? Kinda, but I'll eventually fix that later. But just basically everything you can see from above is going to be green. Quick, easy. I mean, I spend a couple minutes on each color on each animal, so not a whole lot of time, and it's going to wind up looking decent on the tabletop. So whatever. This is Slap Chop, and the speed and express paints do their job. Are they the proper color sometimes? No. But a lot of times they are. See, I thought it was too bright, so I actually went back and got Army Painter Military Shade, which is basically a dark green wash, and just kind of covered up gave it a quick wash and toned down the green, which to my satisfaction. Of course, these frog eyes are big, and so frog eyes are literal rainbow of colors and different. Some frogs have eyes with all different colors in them, but kind of a standard yellow eyes for frogs. Some have red, some have different colors, but whatever. I went with yellow for these, so I'm just basically painting the eyeball yellow, because why not? Of course, I'm moving on to the lizards here. A ghillie dew, which is a color I actually use for orcs and greenskins. So, yeah, it'll work for a lizard. Why not? I just paint the whole... And if you notice, the undersides are black, and I'm really not caring, because guess what? You're not going to see the underside of a lot of these, so why would I do that? But again, painted all the green, and I'm using the same yellow as I used for the frog's eyes. I'm painting a few yellow dots on just for some visual, break up the solid green color. Just quick, easy, and a tiny little bit of effort, and it just makes such a difference. And of course, the scorpions. I'm painting them with this like rotted color, brownish yellow. Actually, it's the same color I painted the giant spider with, so it works. Not all. I didn't want to go with black because, whatever. But I like this color for scorpions. I just think it just makes them look nastier. Big giant black scorpion. Okay, yeah, whatever. But I wanted it to be a desert color, so, whatever. And of course, giant crickets. And I went with the same colors with the scorpions because why? I see lots of crickets. There are lots of different colors, but I just like this one, so that's what I used. A quick express paint, and I'm done. Of course, now I'm using a Sharpie to color black all the different eyes black, just to make it different from the actual skin. The spiders, the ants, just for a little bit of difference, and yeah, using a quick Sharpie, get it done. I'm using a fine tip Sharpie, but I just want to paint the eyes black. And of course, I'll paint black lines for the frog's eyes as well, but it's a quick and easy way to do this. Of course, now that these are all painted, let's start snipping them off the coffee stir sticks. Leaving them enough that I can actually pin them to the bases. And I'll show you that in a minute, but okay, these little spiders, they're a little difficult because I super glued them to the sticks. But hey, they came off. Okay, now I'm going to use these pins, kind of get an idea of where the pin is going to stick into the base. And then just use a pin vise, or a small hand drill, and just drill a hole through that the paper clip pieces will fit through. And then boom, add a little bit of glue to the tip of the paper clip, and then just jam it through the hole that I made, and boom, we're good. And this should hold this animal's air. Now, of course, with these little spiders, there's no pin, so I'm going to have to super glue them directly to the bases, but it works. So, cool little swarm of spiders. Yeah, send spider swarms after your players. All the different little critters and the poison attacks. Yeah, that'll make their life a living. So, whatever. I like spiders. I do. Of course, I'm going to add huge miniatures grass tufts to all the different ones. Different ones will get different colors of tufts, but it's just a matter of picking them up, it's a little bit of PVA glue, and then sticking them on. If I want tufts on the bases, then the bases are going to get tufts. And of course, last step, I want to black out the edges of the bases, because you don't have to do this, but it works, and I am really happy with how these all turned out. The frogs, the lizards, the spiders, the giant ants, the giant ladybugs, which I'm really happy with, and of course the crickets and the giant scorpions. Everybody loves scorpions. There's a bunch of low-level monsters for your players. If you made this far, means you watch the end, and as always, thank you very much. Click, if you like the video, hit thumbs up, all the YouTube crap. But again, if you guys have actually done similar stuff, where you've taken some cheap plastic stuff from the dollar store or Halloween decorations, whatever, come to the Discord and post pictures. I would love to see it, because surely I can't be the only one who's done something like this. I would love to see other ideas and similar thoughts. Maybe not similar to some of the thoughts I've had, but but again, guys, just come to the Discord, post pictures. I would love to see them. But as always, guys, remember, when you're doing your terrain or using some cheap plastic toys, remember, the only people you got to worry about is you, because it's your minis and terrain.